Now hear the word of the Lord from Hebrews 4:14. So then, since we have a great high priest who has entered heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to what we believe. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Good morning, Sojourn. Peace be with you. Yeah, you guys can have a seat. My name's Stephen. I'm one of the pastors here at Sojourn. It's an honor to be with you guys this morning. Happy Advent. Today is the first Sunday in Advent, which means they've released Mariah Carey out of her holding cell, and the Christmas carols are here, and there's nothing you can do about it. So, happy Advent. Which means we've got a lot going on at our church. So one of the things we've got going on is year-end giving. So some of you like to give at year's end. So this year, our year-end giving areas are, we haven't had raises for the staff in the past 3 years, so there's some talk about giving us bonuses, which would be awesome. And then the other one is buildings. So the building was built in 1915, and as you can tell, it's got some stuff going on. So we would like to take care of our building. We'd like to be good stewards of what God's given us. And so year-end giving is going to, if you want to give to that, you can note it on your check, or you can note it on the app, or the different ways to give. You can make note of that, and we'll make sure it gets to the right spot. We also have Sojourn Late and Loud coming up, which is our evening service. So it's late and it's loud. And so that is next Sunday night at 8:08 p.m. Our minister of distortion and delay, Joe Titchener, is leading that. And it will be a whole lot of fun. We'd love to have you come out. And then we've also got a lot of other things going on. Our Sojourn Kids Neon Christmas Party is Friday, December 9th. The Women's Gift Exchange is coming up next Saturday. We've got caroling. We've got just a whole host of things. So check it out. It's in the app. It's been there for weeks, but that's what we've got going on. So it's Advent, and we've been going through the book of Hebrews, and traditionally what we usually do is we'll stop going through the book that we're in, and we'll do an Advent sermon series. But this year we're doing a little different, and we're going to slow down. We're going to stay in the book of Hebrews, and we're going to do a verse-by-verse exposition of Hebrews 4:14 through 16, and we'll even break it down and split some of those verses up into two parts. But this week we're in Hebrews 4:14 because Hebrews 4:14 and essentially the whole book of Hebrews is the same idea, which is what Sam and Dave said, which is, hold on, I'm coming, right? It is the whole idea is look to Jesus and hold on. That is what Advent's about. It's saying, the Advent means the arrival. Jesus came, he arrived, and now we're waiting for him to arrive again. And so the author of Hebrews is saying the same thing. We're waiting for Jesus. Hold on. But why does he even have to say it? What's so important that he would repeat this again and again and again? Well, you look at what he says the people that he's writing this letter are going through, and he says, first off, you guys have been put in jail, you've been abused, and everything you've worked your lives for has been taken from you because you've followed Jesus. And so you've got to imagine this is like getting hit in the nose and getting knocked out and finding yourself waking up on the mat, and you're trying to get up, and these people are just spitting blood. And the author of Hebrews is coming along and looking them in the eyes as they're debating, do I want to get up? Is it worth it? Do I even want to try this Christian life anymore? And the author of Hebrews comes along, and he looks at them, and he says, you can, because of Jesus, get up. But he's not telling them, do it because I said so. And he's not saying, here are the 5 ways that you can get up. He's giving them a reason why. A reason to live. A reason to get off the mat. And he says, your why is Jesus. And once you know your why, it's like, well, what do I do with that? And he says, your how is to hold strong. So we have to look at this. Why is your why Jesus? And you look at what the author of Hebrews says. He says, he is the great high priest who ascended or transcended into heaven, Jesus, the Son of God. So let's break that down. The great high priest. So if you know your Bible, the high priests, their job in the Old Testament was to move people out of God's wrath and into God's mercy. They were supposed to be the people who would teach you that God wanted to be merciful and that they would show you the right kind of ways to live so that way you could live in God's mercy. And the high priests in the Old Testament were absolutely terrible at their jobs. The first high priest was Aaron, and God is on a cloud on Mount Sinai with Moses, and he is saying, I want to be merciful to you, my people. I brought you out of slavery. I want to love you. And what does Aaron do? He moves those people out of God's mercy and into God's wrath by making a golden calf and saying, let's worship this. He did the exact opposite thing the high priest was supposed to do. And then you keep going and you look at Eli, the high priest in 1 Samuel, and he had 2 sons that he was supposed to train to be high priests. And instead, he just kind of gave up and said, they can do whatever they want to. And so they abused their power. And they took the things that were supposed to belong to the Lord and took them for themselves, and took the things that they were supposed to take for themselves, which was sort of the crummy stuff, and said, oh, this is for God. And that's what they taught the people to do. And so they moved God's people out of his mercy and into his wrath. The high priests were terrible at their jobs. And now we have the author of Hebrews saying Jesus is the great high priest. What does that mean? That means that Jesus actually stands in the gap. He actually can move you out of God's wrath and into God's mercy. And he does that because he loves you. Jesus was finally the high priest who got it right. He is the one who says, I will stand in the way of God's wrath, and I will show you how to live. And I will live in you to enable you to live in God's mercy. And Jesus offers you that for free because he loves you. And he wants you to live in God's mercy. So he is the great high priest. He actually does the high priest's job. But not only is he the great high priest, he also transcended into heaven. Now, what in the world does that mean? Well, symbolically, high priests could only symbolize what the high priest was supposed to do, which was stand between you and God. But Jesus actually transcended. He ascended from earth into heaven and now sits at the right hand of God the Father. This was symbolically displayed when the temple curtain was torn in two. And it was saying, now there is no separation between God and man. And Jesus is saying, absolutely there is no separation between God and man because even heaven itself is a barrier that cannot keep me out. I have transcended the barrier that keeps God from men. And I now stand in that gap as the great high priest. So Jesus is an unstoppable force. He has an unstoppable power that allows him to stand at the right hand of God and be our great high priest. Not only is that 2 reasons why he's great, but the third reason is Jesus is the Son of God. And to be clear, this isn't saying there is God the Father and God the Mother and they had a son and Jesus is their son. No, to claim to be the Son of God is to claim to be God himself. And the author of Hebrews knows this. And so he is saying Jesus is the great high priest who has the power to transcend into heaven, and he is God himself. He is divine. So, again, the author of Hebrews has been doing this. He's been extending this metaphor for the first 4 chapters, trying to say, this is how awesome, this is how great Jesus is. And he's trying to do this in a way that says, Jesus is your why. And what does that mean? Well, Jesus is the reason you want to know him. You want to be with him. He is the reason you get out of bed in the morning. He is the reason that you sleep in peace at night. He is the thing that keeps you going during the day. You live for him. You breathe for him. Jesus, salvation himself, is everything that you're living for. And you live like this not to get more of Jesus, or you don't live like this to make sure that God loves you. You live like this because God already loves you and heaven is already within you. We have a power that is the greatest known power in all the known universes, united with your soul. Use your mind's eye to see that. Imagine if you could just open your eyes to see the spiritual reality that is around you right now, that you are sitting in a room of immortals who are united with the God of the universe, who are fighting not against flesh and blood, but against powers and spirits. Just use your mind's eye to consider that reality is at play right now in this very room. What would it even look like if you could see it? That is our reality. And one day, in the new heavens and the new earth, God will unleash you to be your fullest self, and sin and sorrow and pain will be no more. And that is the faith that we profess, and that is what God is calling us to hold on to. And it sounds great. It sounds like a great faith, and it sounds like a cool idea that you're united with God and that you're filled with a spirit of power and love and self-discipline. But the problem is that most of our days are not like that. We don't live like every moment we're united to God. As a matter of fact, our lives are filled mostly with incredible moments of pain and bitterness and failure. So we have this idea of, here's what is offered to you through Jesus, if you could just see it. But then the reality that we're facing doesn't seem to match. And so what does the author of Hebrews say? He says to hold strong. And I love, there's this one word which is translated hold fast, but it's so much grittier than that. The word that he uses is this Greek word which is kratomen. And it's translated as hold firm, but it should just be a hold strong. So it's out of this idea of Kratos. And if any of you guys are familiar with Kratos from God of War, yeah, you got me, right? That's what this word is from. Kratos was the Greek spirit of strength. He was the embodiment of strength, and he was brutal and merciless. And this is the kind of grip that we're to hold our faith with. And again, it sounds great, but it's so hard. And I would say it's so hard in large part because our mind's eye just doesn't see the reality that's around us. It's mostly blind. And so we get bored with our Christianity. And out of our boredom, we feel pain, and our pain makes our faith feel fake. And so when the tough times come and push comes to shove, you let go. And the author of Hebrews knows this. And this is why he spends the first 4 chapters trying to engage your mind's eye to see Jesus for who he really is, so he gives you something to hold on to. Someone that this is Jesus, the God-man. He is who you have put your faith in. Hold strong. So know your why. Meditate on Jesus. Consider Jesus. Allow your mind's eye to see the reality that is all around you that you can't see with your physical eyes. And then you hold strong. And it's so tough for me to say that because I love being a pastor here. But one of the hardest things about being a pastor here is knowing all the immense amount of pain that all of us bring this morning. It is a miracle that we're able to even show up and smile and say good morning and not just break down. Some of you have been lied about. Some of you have been cheated out of the life that was rightfully yours. Some of you have a body that is racked with pain each and every waking moment, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Some of you have watched the parents that you love die. Some of you had parents who didn't love you, and some of you didn't love your parents. Some of you have watched your loved ones slowly and intentionally poison themselves. Some of you have watched your children live with a disease that you can do absolutely nothing about. And some of you have watched your children die. You didn't just get hit in the mouth, you got stabbed in the back. And you're down, and you're bleeding out, and you're spitting blood. And at this point in your weakness is when Satan's words are the most tempting. And he loves to come to you and just whisper, just a couple of drinks, and it'll all go away. Just stay in bed. It'll be fine. Just stay. Quit caring. If you just quit caring, it won't be so painful. Just let go. But I want you to hear me this morning. Listen to my words, because I'm repeating the words of the God Most High. Hold strong. I'm telling you this morning that Jesus is offering you more than your very life. He's offering you his. You are not what you've done, or what was done to you, or what you are going through. Your soul is united to the most powerful being in all the known universes. Hold strong. And you might be thinking, I don't have it in me. And you don't. But you are more than you. You are empowered by the God Most High. Yes or no? Yeah. Your spirit is united to the God of heaven's armies. Yes or no? You are a warrior who fights not against flesh and blood, but against spirits and the dark powers of the universe. Yes or no? You are. So hold strong. You don't hold strong to the world. You don't hold strong to your very life. You hold strong to Jesus. But how do you do this? It's a great idea. Hold strong, but to what? How? Do I just try harder? Nope. Do I just have to figure out how to get the willpower? No. It's going to sound absurd, but it's the honest answer. It's by prayer. And it's not the kind of prayer where you bring your laundry list before God. It's the kind of prayer that feels like you are straining with every inch of muscle in your body to push yourself up and you're screaming. It's the kind of prayer that feels like wrestling, like Jacob did with God, holding on for dear life because you know you'll die if you don't. The kind of prayer that is screaming and grunting and groaning. It's the kind of prayer that makes you want to throw a table across the room. It's also the kind of prayer that feels like rest in the middle of a hurricane. That slows you down and makes you feel like you might live. It's also the kind of prayer that feels like waves of numbness are just rolling over you, trying to drown you, and you feel like somebody's just barely hanging on to your collar, keeping your head above the water. This is a very difficult kind of prayer. But it's your gift, and it is your calling. That is how we hold strong to Jesus. And so we want to become a church that can hold strong in our weaknesses. And so that's why I want you to boast all the more gladly about your weaknesses, because that's how Christ's power will rest on you. That's why, for Christ's sake, I want you to delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when you are weak, then you are strong. Hold strong. And this Advent season, I invite you to look to Jesus, to see him for who he really is, to see the life that he's offering you, the infinite joys. And I invite you to see this great high priest who has ascended into the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. And I invite you to hold strong to him through prayer. And we'll do that together in just a moment as we pray the Lord's Prayer. But for now, I invite you to close your eyes and bow your heads, and we'll approach the throne of grace.